Good evening, AGS crew, and welcome to this week's video. I am back in New Hampshire getting ready for round 2 of the playoffs, the semifinals. We had a great first round of the playoffs, setting us up for another great week this week. It'll be another quick video today. Let's get right into it. We'll start off with a recap of round 1. Round 1 was projected by Sleeper to be two very close matchups. All four teams were up and down throughout the day, and we really didn't have any clear winners until Sunday night. In our first matchup, Jeff advances to the next round while Scott is knocked out. Scott hasn't scored this low since all the way back in week 1. Stevenson's injury was a key factor, as well as the Bucs defense putting up -5 points. Most of Scott's players missed their projections by a few points, and all of it added up to Scott coming in over 50 points lower than his original projection. Jeff had a pretty average week himself, and this is the lowest he's scored since week 9. A couple of disappointing scores in his lineup, but Trevor Lawrence had his biggest game of the season, and that led to Jeff getting the victory here. We had a pretty crazy outcome in our second matchup of the week as well, with Josh knocking out Taro and moving on to the second round. Josh finally got his revenge after losing to Taro twice in the regular season. Taro lost two huge players to injury during their games, T. Higgins and Kyler Murray both going down and putting up basically goose eggs. Waddle scoring only 5 points didn't help either, and just a slew of disappointments led to Taro scoring less than 100 points for the second time this season. Awful timing with those injuries, but ultimately it probably would not have mattered with Josh scoring almost 200 points this week. Josh hasn't scored even close to this many points since going all the way back to week 5. It's perfect timing for his team to go off again. Hurts, Sanders, Judy, Knight, Geno Smith all having big days. He had a couple of players miss projections by a small margin, but when you have 3 players score over 100 points, that's really not going to matter. Steve and I were on a bye, but both of us had pretty disappointing weeks. I'm going to chalk it up to not checking our lineups very well since we had the bye week, but we'll see what happens next week. Just great first week of the playoffs, guys. Congratulations to the teams moving forward. Let's take a look at round 2. First up for round 2, we have number 1 seed Steve going up against number 5 seed Jeff. Sleeper has this one projected with less than a 1-point margin. Let's take a closer look at their weekly scoring. On average, Steve has outscored Jeff by about 7 points a game so far this season. That doesn't tell the whole story though, as Jeff has outscored Steve by an average of 26 points over the last 3 weeks. Both teams have looked great for most of the year. Steve's had 2 weeks above 200 points, 4 weeks above 180 points, and Jeff has had 1 week over 200 and 3 weeks above 180. Neither team has dipped much below the 120 mark either, and most of the time they're both sitting above 140 points. I agree with Sleeper. This one's going to be very close. For Steve, Devontae Adams has been so hit or miss all year. Justin Fields has been fantastic for the last 6 or 7 weeks. Jeff has a similar story with Aaron Jones and Trevor Lawrence, but I think it's going to come down to how these 4 players perform relative to each other, and I'm going to give the slight edge to Steve. I think Justin Fields continues to be great. It's going to be a shootout against the Eagles, and I think Steve takes this one. Last up, we have yours truly, the number 2 seed, going up against Josh, the number 3 seed. Sleeper has Josh with the upper hand here, projected 15 points higher than my team as of right now. Let's take a closer look. On average, Josh has outscored me by 8.5 points a game this season. We peaked at different times, both of us dealing with some major injuries and struggling at different points in the season. Josh is still without Breece Hall and Deebo Samuel, but has had a fantastic few weeks regardless of that. I'm missing Cooper Kupp and haven't scored more than 150 points since week 9. In fact, over the last 3 weeks, Josh has outscored me by 47 points a game on average. Just crazy. I have to agree with Sleeper on this one. It's going to take a miracle for me to take down Josh this week. His team is just better than mine at this point in the season. I obviously have my fingers crossed that I might get a big game for my running backs and come out on top, but not a lot of hope on my end here. Josh, your combination of Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders is going to be too much for me, and I think you take this one. Don't forget that this is the first NFL week with Saturday games, so pay attention to your rosters this weekend for any last-minute moves you need to make, and good luck to everybody playing this weekend. It's going to be another fun weekend of football.